Hi.
Hi, how do I share the PowerPoint?
Gosh, thank you for joining. Had me a little worried. I couldn't see you in the schedule, so forgive me. I guess, Nicole, I really wanted to take the time to make sure that we introduced you properly, given again that you have had and have a vast and varied experience, and knowing that when we were speaking to Microsoft, we didn't necessarily get to hear a lot about your previous experience. So if I may. So, Nicole, you're a dynamic advocate for ADHD in Australia and our corporate programs lead. You've got a BA in laws from Monash University, expertise in anti-discrimination employment and industrial relations law, passionate about improving experience for employees with disabilities, and obviously working with organisations to achieve safe and inclusive, empowering workplaces. Wow. And we can't wait to hear how, from your perspective, in and around, a legal complaint being too late. So over to you, Nicole. Have you got your presentation ready to go?
This will be interesting. So
Nothing like tap dance on a live stream. I also have it if we need it.
Okay.
Bear with me.
I've got it on the screen, but I'm unsure how to share it.
So just that little screen there in the bottom. You see the share screen?
Oh, okay.
Well, while we're lining that up, I think let's have a chit chat. So you have, I mean, obviously with your just from today, listening to Microsoft, how have you, what have been your key takeaway from that, and what were you able to learn from the team?
I guess my key takeaway was how important leadership and workplace culture is to supporting neurodiversity in the workplace, but also encouraging people to show up as their true and best selves at work. And you really do need the psychological safety to be able to do that. And that's, that's not achieved overnight in any organisation. So we do have a role to play there at ADHD Australia. Okay.
Yeah, so we have your presentation up.
Perfect.
So you're just going to need to sing out to me for next slide, please.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry for giving you more work to do, Christy. Okay, let's roll because we've got a little bit to get through. Okay, so if I could just go to, back to the first slide. Apologies, Christy.
Oh.
Just back to the first slide. I just want to explain the image there. So for me, in advocating for disability, but also people with ADHD and other neurodiverse conditions, it's about how they're seen and also how the law talks about disability. So my daughter actually drew this earlier in the year, and that is how she sees my son, who has been diagnosed with ADHD. He was diagnosed at 5 years old after a long investigation into autism and other neurological issues. But essentially, with that picture, what that is saying to me is she sees him as a blur of hyperactivity, and this is how she explained it to me. She said, I love him, I absolutely love him, but sometimes he can be a little bit much, which I appreciate. But the I guess the situation is how we see others. We need to challenge ourselves on that. We really, really do. And that's why I have titled this "A Legal Complaint is Too Late," because what I've taken out of looking at the Disability Royal Commission is there's been an increase in complaints in discrimination in employment, which I'll take you through in a later slide. So we'll just go to the next slide. So I'm not going to bore everybody, and you'll be really grateful, I'm sure, to know that, about the legalities and the technical legal side. I will briefly touch on the legal framework, because certainly there were some really powerful recommendations that came out of the Royal Commission about recommending reforms to the anti-discrimination framework in Australia, because it is quite complex. It's very confusing. There's a raft of avenues and laws, and trying to assist an advocacy client in determining which way they should go is a really, really difficult thing. It's, on one hand, it's really great, we have the protections there. On the other, you really, really don't want to end up in a space where you're making a legal complaint. And if people, or as an employer, if you're on the receiving end of that complaint, because certainly neurodiversity is higher on the organisation agenda, as it should be, as with any other social responsibility goals. And so it's really, really important from a brand perspective that is, top of mind for the organisation, and they're making sure that their practices, which, let's face it, they're neurotypical. Not everybody can roll with those practices. So I'll give some insights into some advocacy cases I've recently worked on, and then I've called it why we need to stop sleepwalking through life. So this is all about prevention. Reacting only gets us so far. So proactive removal of discrimination from our workplaces will get us a lot further. I really do see, if someone is having to make a legal complaint, and I do appreciate that people may need to do that. If they do need to do that it's kind of like the ambulance down the bottom of the cliff for that person in terms of getting them the help that they need. And the damage has already been done. So this was something my son said to me. My brain was too busy being awesome, which I absolutely loved his reframe. And I'm hoping to educate a little bit more the legal profession on that as well, in terms of how ADHD is described in the legal profession. There's a lot of ableism. They're absolutely well-intentioned, but there's still quite a gap of understanding around ADHD and other neurodiverse conditions. So let's just kick off really briefly into the legal framework. Oop. Thanks, Christy. Okay, so we've got a couple of stats here. Nearly half, so 45.2% of all employed people with disability reported that they had experienced unfair treatment or discrimination due to their disability from their employer in the past 12 months. So that was from recent Australian Bureau of Statistics data, and that's quite obviously a significant percentage of people. The other aspect I should add to that is that is in terms of representation in the workforce, we still have a long way to go with disability. So that's actually quite a staggering number and quite distressing when you think about how many people represent the disability cohort, for want of a better term. So we also then had the Disability Royal Commission, and what an amazing long process, but absolutely worth the wait for the report. I guess it will now come down to what will come out of that, and I'll touch on some of the recommendations later and what that might mean and what businesses might want to consider in terms of their practices, but also for people who are struggling or are concerned about disclosing they have ADHD. Is there any hope in that particular report? During the hearing, there was a lot of support for a previous report that the Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commission released called Free and Equal. And that report is very scathing of the anti-discrimination law framework. It talks a lot about that it's confusing for both parties, so employees and employers and businesses. And what we've got to be really, really careful of, whilst we love to go trailblaze and change the world and make everything really fair and just, is if we make it too burdensome from a regulatory perspective, then we're going to not encourage employment of diverse people, and we won't have the amazing, vibrant, inclusive, and far more sparkly, interesting workplaces we could if we went down that path. So it is a little bit of a balancing act. There's some accountability, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But there's also just, I guess, the recognition that there's got to be that trust in that relationship between the employer and employee. And the workplace culture is absolutely a key. I love talking about that topic, but anyway, but it is instrumental. It's not just something you say. That the leaders can't go around just talking about we've got a great culture, we're like family here, and then there's a gap in what they're actually doing. So how they're treating someone, if they're undermining someone or belittling them in front of others, and particularly if that person has actually been vulnerable enough and courageous enough to seek help. And I'll talk through some of the experiences I've had with some clients, some advocacy clients, and just some of the very bizarre and just unfortunate things that have been said to them when they've challenged their manager or challenged the organisation about some of those issues. So the Human Rights Commission reported that the highest number of complaints is in disability discrimination, and they average a little over 40% of the complaints that commission receive per year. Now, this is only just one avenue people can take to make a complaint. So that's actually really staggering because a significant proportion of those relate to employment. And I'm not, in terms of the purpose of this talk, because this would go on for hours if I was trying to touch on my other passion areas being education and other areas, but I need to keep it to the workplace for now. But I just wanted to go through a couple of those stats. So if we just go to the next slide. Thanks, Christy. I owe you. We're a great team here at ADHD Australia. Okay, this is what I understand the legal framework would feel like to disability advocacy clients of mine. So a recent lady described it as an absolute mind, and I won't say the expletive, but you can complete that. But essentially, she just had, her mind was racing with all of the different laws. And on one hand, she was grateful that there's some protection, but on the other, it was very confusing to her about, well, hang on, which way do I go here? This is actually quite confusing and costly. It's most of these matters, if they're not resolved at mediation, will end up in court. So instituting court proceedings is an extremely prohibitive factor. I don't think we're seeing all the data that we could, and that was acknowledged in the Royal Commission. That certainly a lot of things are resolved in a private conference or mediation. And look, and to be perfectly frank, that is, if that's the outcome that the individual wants, a lot of the time the people I represent, they don't want to be in a place where they're making a legal complaint. They just wanted to give their best at work, and they wanted to show up as their best and be accepted for who they are. Or, okay, I might need help. I might need a little bit of help meeting your expectations. I cannot be in the office 5 days a week. I cannot focus in an open plan office, for example, and then having that all of those requests trampled on. So the other piece I just wanted to share too, this was discussed at length in the Disability Royal Commission, is Article 27 of the Convention of the Human Rights with Disabilities. It recognises the rights of persons with disabilities to work on an equal basis with others. And this actually really does inform a lot of our current legal framework. So this convention, basically the philosophy of it, what it is trying to achieve, informs all of the laws that you see there. Okay. I'll just move to the next slide, if I could. Just being conscious of time. Okay, a couple of insights. Now, this is not representative of all employers. There's been some really, really good, sensible, fantastic. I mean, as we heard from Microsoft earlier, the session I moderated today, that is just that's a really, really feel-good story of an employee who disclosed their ADHD and was supported by their manager. So we must and can do better. Here are just some things that I've overheard during supporting people with the particular matters. How does he have a disability? You can't even see it. How can you manage something you can't see? So that was an excuse from a company not to do anything, basically, when the person had requested some accommodations and adjustments. And people don't always do that. When will she overcome her ADHD? Surely there is a responsibility on her to cure it. If we could just get a time frame on that, was another unfortunate thing I overheard. But look, all of this doesn't dishearten me. It just fires me up more to make sure that education and awareness are out there, because I don't believe people deliberately intend to be an a-hole and say these things. I think there's a lot of confusion. We obviously need to give clarity about this, and we have been, and it is getting better. However, on the advocacy side of things, you've got to appreciate, I see people at their worst, and both parties. So I see the employee at their worst, and I'm seeing the company probably not in the best light they would like. So the other one I hear is, yeah, she told me she was diagnosed with ADHD. She never asked for help. That's on her, not me. We're like a family. She just had to ask. Why didn't she ask? And that probably is a big frustration of some companies that I do hear, that, you know, why didn't they spell it out to me? But there's a thing called a medical fitness for work, obviously working collaboratively with the person. The best person to tell the employer that is actually the treating psychologist or doctor who's diagnosed the ADHD. Apologies, my voice. My daughter was diagnosed with ADHD, so I know exactly what he was going through. He should be damn grateful to have me as a boss, because I get it. But as we've said before, you know one person with ADHD, it doesn't mean you know every single person. That's just one person with ADHD. And the labels of high functioning, low functioning, severe are not helpful. They're not helpful at all. Okay. Thank you, Christy. You'll be relieved to know I'm nearly there. My voice will be relieved too. Okay. All right. So Some key insights. And I'm not saying you have to read those two documents, but they are well worth a read. The executive summary is very important from the Royal Commission. The other document is more to do with, so it's a very targeted document with some recommendations around housing, education, and employment. So we need to focus on prevention. And this is where I come back to a legal complaint really is too late. And our anti-discrimination laws are outdated. They're very difficult to use. And there's significant barriers to inclusion. And part of that's just recognising what those are. And some of that could be just even the open plan office, or we need everybody in the office, which is a bit interesting given the hybrid space we've moved to. But I appreciate every organisation is different. And we need to increase the pathways and opportunities for people with a disability to access the employment that they wish, and not just a job, a good job. Came out of the Commission. Okay, so in terms of law reform, really briefly, the Fair Work Act does have a definition of disability discrimination. However, it differs from the Disability Discrimination Act. So there is a suggestion that it really should just not be so confusing, and let's align with that particular legislation, and make sure it is consistent. The other is to amend the Disability Discrimination Act. Now, some of the witnesses in this matter did actually encourage a positive duty to prevent discrimination across all of the raft of laws. That didn't quite happen, but the Victorian Equal Opportunity Act does actually have a positive duty within it, and does outlaw vilification. But in terms of the Disability Discrimination Act, that reasonable adjustments are at the forefront of employers' minds, so that they're giving consideration to them, they're consulting on them with the employee, and preferably someone who has more of a medical opinion than the employer. And finally, the Fair Work Ombudsman. So they do have a role already, but it's not well known. So people can make a complaint, but they're not very resourced to deal with that. So what the recommendation is that their powers, to enforce the law are looked into, or boosted. I'm very apologetic about my voice. Okay.
So Nicole, knowing that your voice is, are you there? Knowing that your voice is failing just a little bit, we've only got a couple more minutes to go. Maybe it'd be a good segue just to wrap it up. Well, just to try and understand what, as you know, and as part of the reason for you coming on board today was absolutely dispelling some of the rigmarole around the legislation and trying to make it a little bit more relatable for everyone on the call today and on the stream. Is there something that, from a takeaway point of view, the one thing that you would give to our audience today, what would that be?
I think just really is to keep an open mind and be curious, create a safe culture, and just make sure people are supported to ask, to disclose, and ask for what they need, but also appreciate they may not know what they need because they're still figuring it out. But our work, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are supporting businesses to create healthy workplace cultures, and make sure it's not ending up in such an ugly state.
Absolutely. And I think, part of your insight on the team of ADHD Australia is everything that you take and have experienced in your coaching realm, and then obviously from your legal background. How are you applying that within the corporate workplace program that you're developing?
So I guess my insights are about best practice, prevention. So that's why I say the urgency around being proactive is really, really important. And that's how it is shaping that particular program. And I am really, really, really excited for the ADHD and neurodiverse community when that is released, because we're not going to get anywhere if we don't work together on this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, and harking back to, everybody that we've heard today are coming up with these absolute golden nuggets of insight. And I think, from equity to trailblazing to accommodations to growth mindset. But I think my new favorite alignment here is my brain was too busy being awesome. I think, from a relatable standpoint, especially with my son as well, absolutely, that rings so true. You must be so very proud of your little one.
And he is my why at the end of the day.
Yeah.
He really, really is.
Yeah. And so in terms of, I guess, obviously your work out in the field and the best and worst parts around ADHD, and I am asking our panelists and our delegates for the answer to this question, the worst and best part, starting with the worst and ending on the high note of the best or the happiest piece around ADHD.
I think the worst part is
saddest. It's saddest. It's a little bit more.
The gaslighting.
Right.
The best part is the understanding when you feel like you've been, I'm part of a wizarding, community here. I've got some superpowers. This is great. And just clarity. Finally, things make sense. They fall into place.
Absolutely. Oh gosh. Well, again, thank you so much for coming back and presenting your wonderful insights in this way, and shining a light, I think, for everyone on stream in and around. Pardon?
Apologies about the voice.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's fine. We'll run this home. Gosh, again, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, Nicole.